Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the Corners In YouTube channel. I did a draft last night in ESPN 8-team head-to-head most categories 5x5 league, and I just thought I'd kind of run through it and share it with you guys so you can kind of get a feel for how I look at these things and what my kind of approach is. I'm typically doing auction drafts and daily fantasy type stuff, so I really like finding deep value players. So I typically like the later rounds than these like the early to mid rounds. But I went ahead and did this draft because it was actually really interesting. I haven't gotten into any of my 2021 rankings or anything yet, but I had a lot of fun doing this and thought I'd share it. So I ended up with the number one overall pick. I went with Acuna here, 5x5 category. I think he can help you the most. Plus, I'm kind of a Rockies homer still, regrettably. And so I wasn't too interested in Tatis or Betts. So I was like, Acuna's my guy for sure. So I didn't have a lot of doubt there. You could always go pitcher and try to get those, the really high value pitchers. But I'd rather someone that can shore up my outfield because this league had 5 outfield spots to fill. So I went ahead and got Acuna. As you can see, Cole and Bieber, and then DeGrom went. And I really don't like drafting first overall because then I'm, all the way at the end of round 2. I feel like I just kind of miss out on a good chunk of players there. And you see Bauer, Kershaw, Darvish go as well. All pitchers I really like. I've had Bauer in my Dynasty keeper league, and, it's paid off pretty good. But I don't know if I want to draft him in round 2 yet. He got a big deal, and there's a lot of news out there, but I'm just not super high on him, that high in the draft. Trey Turner, I like, also pretty high, but I wouldn't mind ending up with someone like him. I ended up with Story here at the end of the second round. Since Turner went, I was like, you know what, I'm going to grab Story. So I have a top tier player, but of course Rockies, who knows if he's going to be traded or what team he's going to end up on, or if there could be playing time concerns. Honestly, the teams that are looking for a shortstop, there's not a lot of them, so he's probably not going to be traded, but we'll have to keep tabs on that one. I ended up with Bellinger in the third round. I'm bad at making decisions, so I'm really bad at picking first or last overall, where I have to make 2 decisions at once, and I just didn't like kind of the risk with some of these other players. Didn't want to get a pitcher just yet. So I went ahead with Bellinger. He's got, first base and outfield eligibility. I like that. And I don't think his injury concerns are going to be that big of a deal. So we'll see. A couple other players I like that went just after I picked him was Ozuna. I think that's early for Ozuna. Rendon's pretty good. I would have liked to end up with him in my 4th round pick. Thought about it in the 3rd round. I just couldn't do it. Then we get into the 4th round here. Some of my favorite players went, DJ, Nolan, love them. It's part of fantasies having guys you like, and so I really like DJ. And I think he's a really good fantasy option because of his position eligibility. You can play him pretty much anywhere across the infield. He should play more shortstop than he does. He always should have, even back in his Rockies days. But he'll be eligible at first base, second base, and third base in a lot of leagues. And that's a huge value to have a player of that caliber be that flexible in your lineup, especially when you can change your lineup every day or even every week. As guys get hurt, as the season drags on, he'll be a huge asset to be able to move him around and get top quality production out of someone like that. You can find a lot of those guys with multiple position eligibilities, but not a lot of them are really high production type players. They're more bench players, utility guys, and so DJ really offers a lot of value. So I'm kind of sad I missed out on him. Nolan, I'd like ending up with a little later. I think a lot of people, even the Rockies, I think a little bit with this stupid trade they did, I think they're kind of sleeping on his value. He's a very high motor player, and I think other than like the trade concerns and his qualms with the ownership and the GM of the Rockies, that affected him last year. I think a lot of it was there's no fans. You know, he is a superstar that I think he really relies on that fan energy to feed off of, and I think he kind of missed out on that in the shortened season. So I'm pretty high on him in terms of I think everybody else is low on him. So I think you can get some good value there. Not sure if it's in the 4th round, but you can see he goes right after Rendon. I think that's about right. After Machado, too. I mean, I think him and Machado are pretty similar, but they're kind of opposites. Like, Machado didn't have nearly the 2019 that Nolan did, but Machado had a great bounce back in 2020 in the 60 games, and in the 60-game season, I should say. And I really think that you should be able to find a lot of value in Nolan in a lot of drafts when you get down to the 4th, 5th, 6th round. See how far he falls, see where you can pick him up. But he wasn't there when I picked in the 4th round. I ended up with Scherzer. You can see Salvador Perez went before I picked, and so my next pick was JT Realmuto because Realmuto is going to be a more solid option than Perez. But I like Perez, just not this high. I had him in – I picked him up in my Dynasty League the year he had Tommy John. Like, we drafted that league, like, I don't know, like a week or two after they announced he was going to have Tommy John during spring training. And so that really worked out for me because it was an auction draft, and I just picked him up for $1 and just kept him. But right now, the way everybody's viewing Perez's production from last year – he seems more like a trade bait type guy for me. You know, that I got him so low and I can keep him at such a low price. I don't know if I'd pick him in the 4th round. But I'm happy with Realmuto. Happy that I got Scherzer. I mean, he's really old, but I can almost guarantee he's going to help me in strikeouts. So I'm not too unhappy picking a pitcher that high as long as I know they're going to get production. You know, you can't put too much into ERA, but I really, you know, the strikeout production that Scherzer is going to get it's going to help a lot. And I mean, I remember when he used to go 1st, 2nd round, easy, and so I was pretty happy getting him at the end of the 4th there. And like I said, I'm kind of bad at making 2 decisions at once, so I ended up with him and Realmuto. Then moving on, kind of missed out on a lot of players I like. But fantasy-wise, I think that a lot of these guys are overvalued. Ozzie Albies, Pete Alonso, Vladdy Jr. going in the 5th. I mean, you gotta love it if you're on the Toronto hype train. You gotta pick them all up, you know. But I just can't pick Vladdy Jr. that early. I don't think. Then I ended up with Kenta Maeda at the end of the 6th there. You see some guys going that probably should be drafted. Then there's like Ke'Bryan Hayes, pretty high for him. But, you know, if he's someone you like, you got to go for him. You got to pick him when you can and get him so he's on your team. He could have a great season. I mean, he was one of the best third basemen in terms of production on a plate appearance basis. But, you know, we'll have to see what it looks like if we get a full season this season and, you know, he ends up with 500, 600 plate appearances. It will be very interesting to watch and see how he does. Pirates need him to do good. He'll get plenty of playing time in Pittsburgh, so it's high. It's high to pick him in the 6th, but I like Kenta Maeda and Lance Lynn. I mean, older pitchers again, but I think I can get good production out of them. And I don't like the position players that were available right there, really. And I didn't feel like reaching. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a couple more pitchers. So now I've got them. I've got Scherzer, Maeda, and Lynn. A little bit of flexibility there in terms of trying to cover all my categories. And this whole time, Alex Bregman was the highest overall player still available. So, and surprisingly, none of these guys, all 8 of them, or 7 of them, I should say, stuck through till like 20-ish rounds, and then a couple went auto pick. So I kind of acted as an auto pick and picked up Bregman there at the end of the 8th. And a lot of people are hating on Houston, which they pretty much deserve, I'd say. But fantasy value-wise, I think everyone's sleeping on them a little. So if you can get, an undervalued Jose Altuve, an undervalued Carlos Correa, an undervalued Alex Bregman, go for it. I really think you should go for it because they all had a bad 2020 in the shortened season, but they all did pretty good in the postseason. I think that kind of proves that in a longer season that, everybody will have their slumps, but there are going to be some solid options in fantasy, even moving forward. Then after I got Bregman, I went with Ryu. Like I said, you can't really predict ERA as much as you can predict, something like strikeouts. But, his ERA is pretty stellar. And to pick someone like him up in the ninth, I couldn't pass it up. I like Dominic Smith, but I'd much rather have Ryu. Just keep adding to my pitchers, and I'll fortify my pitchers later on too. I think there's a lot of value there that you can get later on. Thought about Fried, couldn't do it. I was like, Ryu's he's gonna be a good option ERA wise. Toronto should be good. He should get a lot of innings. We'll have to see how that works out. I don't really like Charlie Blackmon going that high, but he's probably going to be the only player left on the Rockies here for a while, so he should be in line for some quality at bats and can hopefully help out in at least average and RBIs. So maybe he's worth a 9th round pick. Jose Brady falling to the 9th is kind of interesting. Going after a lot of other first basemen, that's an interesting pick. I wouldn't mind ending up with him that late. But I end up going Strasburg again, and you can see a lot. Like Chapman goes here, and there's already been a couple relievers going. Spoiler alert, I don't draft any relievers just yet. That's going to be a big part of what I follow is, how saves are allotted to guys and where we can find our value in that, how we can win that category, and how we can win that category without investing all our draft capital, into like 2 or 3 relievers who we don't know if they're going to be closers by the end of the year. We don't know if they're going to, injury risks affect everyone, but closers especially, some of these, even the best closers they only hold the role for so long, and it's kind of a revolving door for most teams. So I think that we'll be able to, during the season, find our value in saves, especially in 5x5. I have like a 10x10 league where I play where you need holds. And so it's kind of more important to be going around getting some of the top tier closers or at least some closers because those guys, even if the closer's role turns into a revolving door, those guys are going to be the first ones in line for holds. Mostly because teams owe them so much money. They're going to put some innings in. But I went ahead and got Strasburg. Again, I think that's some pretty solid production out of a starting pitcher. Not sure I like some of the first basemen going there. Muncy is kind of a DJ LeMahieu type with his different, with his eligibility in a lot of leagues. So he could be a good pick to just shore up your infield. Someone and especially now, he should get more playing time in LA. So it's not a terrible pick, but Teoscar Hernandez is going a little high. Don't know if I want Chapman. Like I said, I'd rather just wait and see. Wait for spring training. We'll find some good relievers. Don't worry about it. After I got Strasburg, I went with Brian Buxton. Need another outfielder, kind of. Like I said, there's 5 outfielders in this setup. So I was like, all right, I got to get an outfielder. Don't mind Buxton. Should be able to produce in all 5 categories. We'll see. I don't think he's too overvalued here in the 11th. Now we're getting into the later rounds. I'm okay with some of these guys that are a little bit more questionable on whether they're undervalued or overvalued. So I'm pretty happy with that pick. And you see like Yaz going right after him, and it's like, man, I love Yaz, but it's a little high. I don't know if I want to. If I had a choice between Buxton and Yaz, it's like, all right, I'm probably going to go Buxton. He's younger. He's going to get more steals. He's probably going to be more productive. But yeah, Yaz is a good option too, I guess. And then Altuve, I think that's pretty undervalued for Altuve. I remember when Altuve was a first, second rounder, no doubt. And so if you can pick him up in the past the 10th round, go for it. Unless you just, on principle, don't want any of those Astros guys, which I think is totally understandable. I like Hendricks too, but, in my Dynasty League, I picked Hendricks up as a value guy and kept him. I've kept him for a while now, so I like that. I like finding deep value in Hendricks. Don't know if I like him in the 11th round just yet, but he's a solid option. I ended up picking McNeil in the 12th, then going into the 13th, I got Mondesi. Raul Mondesi Jr. I know a lot of guys don't like Adalberto just because he kind of sucks in the other 4 categories other than steals, but I don't mind. I like having some solid stolen base guys, and I think that he can produce runs. I know that. I mean, he's not going to produce probably RBIs, but I'm hoping with this pick here, his average does not drag my team down. Some other good options. I really like Hap. Thought about it pretty hard, but that's a little early, I think, for Hap. But it's early for Mondesi too. So wherever you lean on that, Hap's going to give you some good production. I couldn't draft Martinez. JD Martinez is only DH on ESPN, so I just couldn't. He would have filled that utility slot, and that's it. In my 10x10 Dynasty, we actually have a DH slot, and so DHs are super valuable. And in terms of the auction, that's like one of the only things I really ever spend money on. Last year it didn't work out because every team had a DH, but in our 16-team league, there's typically only like 10 DHs, so I'm not afraid to spend money to get a top-flight DH while everyone else is scrounging around trying to find the guy who's going to maybe play DH and hopefully can just qualify for DH at some point in the season. 14th to 15th, I picked up Matt Olson and Matt Chapman. I think they're pretty undervalued right now. I like the A's. I like both Olson and Chapman. Picking Olson moved, in my mind, Bellinger to the outfield, so I can fill another outfield slot, kind of. I like getting Chapman, even though I have Bregman, so Chapman's going to be my corner infielder. If Bregman does suck for a while, then he could move to corner infield maybe, or take up a bench slot. But I like Chapman. I think that both him and Olson, having them on your team together, you'll get some good production out of that. I like Barrios. It's a pretty good pick. I'd like Barrios a couple rounds later, but that's more. It's hard to view the auction mentality versus 5x5, and so I kind of struggled with that in this draft. I ended up getting Marco Gonzalez and Patrick Corbin. I have both of them in my Dynasty Keeper League. They're both pretty solid options in that. I have them both reasonably cheap, so they're both keepers for me. I really like Marco Gonzalez. I think he's pretty undervalued in round 16 here. I mean, it's honestly same with Patrick Corbin. He's still kind of the young gun. I guess I ended up with Strasburg too and Scherzer, so I'm pretty high on the Nationals pitchers, at least in terms of where they're being valued. They didn't have great seasons last year, and so I think that they're gonna at least bounce back enough where these will be value picks where I got all of them. I picked up Dylan Moore and Eduardo Rodriguez. Eduardo, in my early workings on my 2021 stuff, looking at where everyone has different players ranked and where I think they should be ranked, I think Eduardo Rodriguez is super undervalued. So I just have to end up with him at some point, especially getting in here into the 20th round. It's like, all right, I might as well get him. He's my 6th starter. I'm really happy with that. And like I said, I'm not getting any relievers right now, so I'm just going to load up on some starters, see where they end up in their rotations come spring training, and drop maybe 1 or 2 of them to make room for a reliever who's going to give me some saves. Then I ended up, 20 going into 21, ended up with Aaron Saval and Trey Mancini. I like Mancini. It's a good story, coming back from cancer. So I'm kind of invested as a fan that way. I want to root for him, and I think he's that's about where he should be valued in the 20th round, 21st round. So wasn't too unhappy picking him there. I got another starter just because I didn't like any of the position players that were really going off the board, and Savale, like, he's kind of a cheap Shane Bieber. Hopefully, we'll see how that works out. 22nd round, going into the 23rd, I got Garver. Pretty happy I got Garver in the 22nd. Second catcher, but I remember everybody's in the auction draft. Man, I can't remember what he went for. He went for a lot of money in that league, and so I'm happy getting him there. Everyone's like he kind of fell pretty far, I think, in this league here. I don't know. Maybe everybody else got catchers. I wasn't paying attention to what everybody had. But, you see Gary Sanchez going, and it's like, man, I'd much rather have Mitch Garver. He's got a way higher ceiling. He can bounce back. I'm almost convinced. Then I got Tapia, Rockies fan, I guess. He was a top batting average guy and a top stolen bases guy last year. He should get more playing time this year. We'll see in the Rockies. They're going to suck. So maybe runs aren't on the table, but it's still Coors Field. So there's going to be a lot of runs scored. And if he's leading off that lineup, he's going to score a lot. So he could be a top 5, top 10 runs guy. Hopefully he'll keep his weird little swing going, and he can be an average guy too. And then these last couple rounds, I just got some value guys. Noah Syndergaard is still out there. There's so many value guys I want to pick at this stage. I wish there was 40 rounds. I got Syndergaard. First thing I did after the draft ended was put him on my IL slot, and that opened up a slot for me to get a reliever when we actually have it figured out who's going to get save opportunities. And then, if he comes back, I can activate him and play him. I'm sure he'll produce. They call him Thor for a reason, guys. I ended up getting McMahon too, Rockies fan, I guess. This is kind of an example of like what I was talking about with DJ LeMahieu. He's the opposite of DJ, right? DJ is a top flight player with a lot of position eligibility. McMahon's got a lot of position eligibility, but he's not really a top player. He's kind of in an 8-team league. I don't know if he should be on a team or not, but he's going to be my bench guy. I can slot him in wherever, if he's playing and someone else has got an off day, I can slot him into my lineup, and he should be able to produce a little bit. I'm not super high on his prospects for this season, but he was up there on the board, and I was like, I'll go for him. There's so many, like I said, so many different guys I wanted to get, these deep value type guys. The last pick of the draft was Zach Davies for me, and I really wanted to get like 4 other guys, but I only had 1 pick. I was like, all right, well, might as well pick up Zach Davies. I think he should be a solid starter. He should help me out, help shore up the rest of my pitching. We'll see where he slots in the rotation. I'm not super sure. Lester, we'll see. We'll see where the Cubs end up going with all that. But there's a couple other guys I wanted. One of the guys is Bobby Dahlbeck. A lot of people don't like him just because he's going to hurt you in average. If you're in a league, like a points league or something, that kind of changes a lot of things because in a 5x5, strikeouts don't count, right? They hurt your average, but home runs, RBIs, and runs count for 3 of the 5 categories. And, Bobby Dahlbeck's a young guy, so he'll probably be a non-zero stolen base guy. Maybe 1 or 2, I don't know, but he won't be 0. So there's a little bit of value there. I kind of wanted to pick him, but I ended up with Zach Davies, shore up my pitching, and just give me a lot of options as we go through spring training here, kind of evaluating where guys end up. But you can always, like Syndergaard, like that pick, I would go for maybe another starter who's going to start on the IL. And this league, we started with 3 IL slots. And so it's like, man, as well just pick your last 3 rounds, pick IL guys who you can just, you get them drafted, get them in your IL slots, and then you can add relievers or, a utility guy. I'm probably going to add relievers, but there's a lot of value. It's an 8-team league, so I'm not super good at that. I'm better in a deeper league where where I'm going around trying to find value guys. And that's where guys like Tapia and McMahon really do help me. But I'm not too unhappy getting Zach Davies there at the end. So yeah, that was my draft. Thought I'd share it with you guys. I'm pretty happy with this team. We'll see how it goes. I haven't looked at any other teams in the league just yet, but we'll have to see. Like I said, only a couple of guys ended up on auto draft, so maybe it's just a random league. So we'll see who keeps paying attention this year and how it goes. So thanks for listening. I went a little long, but I don't know. I'm probably gonna ramble on a lot of these videos. So see you next time.